Welcome, guys, to another episode on Lancashire Smiles. And today I've got a special guest, Dr. Harry Gill, who I first heard about on Instagram and then on his podcast that he runs, the Dental Innovator podcast. So I've been getting to learn some really valuable information about squat practices and different people's journeys into getting into that practice ownership. And I thought it would be a good idea to see if he'll be able to spare some time to really share some of the insights he's had in his own journey, getting to own a practice and from speaking to different practice owners. So thank you, Dr. Harry Gill, for coming on today.
No, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Just so we get to know a little bit more about who you are in your current situation. Can you just tell us where you're working, what type of dentistry you're doing, and a little bit about your practice?
Well, I might as well give you a full intro then. So, BDS 2014 from Newcastle. Yeah. I didn't like dentistry at all. Okay. Failed first year because I just didn't want to be there. Family forced me to stay, so I did a resit, failed that as well because I didn't do any work. And then I resat the whole of first year. Eventually, I think I found a better group of friends in the next year that kind of helped get me through it. And then every year at Newcastle University, there was a problem. So we got through it eventually. And the main reason really was to just complete it. The idea in my mind was not to be a dentist, even after completing dentistry. So then fast forward to 2015, a year after I qualified, my daughter arrived. And then you're in a situation, right? I have to work, there's no other way of doing it. I have to provide for the family, mortgage, all that other stuff, and make sure that I'm providing for my daughter. And that really switched my mindset. And then in 2017 is when I did the implant course, 1-year course, which definitely changed my perspective on dentistry. I definitely enjoy implants a lot. And then that helped me kind of develop the implant career and become much more experienced and really went heavy into that. And then in 2021, my wife and I, we opened our own squat practice in Bradford called New Dental. So we've had quite a ride with the whole experience. We ended up being private investor funded, so we didn't have any bank loans, which is a little bit unique aspect of us opening. And it's a high-end practice. My wife does restorative Invisalign bonding and stuff like that, and wear cases, and I do pretty much implants and surgery. So that's our story in a nutshell.
Okay, so you said a lot there that I want to unpack a little bit more. And the first thing that caught my ear was you didn't enjoy dentistry. So I just wanted to. So okay, why did you decide to apply to dental school, and why is it that you didn't actually enjoy the course?
It's one of those things when you're in an Asian family. A lot of young people from different ethnic backgrounds will actually get this. Is that my dad was always like, right, you're going to university to do medicine or dentistry, or you're going to be in the fish and chip shop. So he's like, no other degree is going to make any difference, mate. So that was always, I think it's quite a funny one because I feel that's changing quite a lot now with the generation coming through now. And I think a lot of parents are starting to understand that there's a big old world out there and you don't need to do those degrees. You can definitely be an entrepreneur and my spirit was probably more well suited to setting up and creating businesses and just going off on that path. But sometimes you're dealt certain hands in life and you just go with it, and then I'm glad that I did dentistry because it's just allowed me to kind of satisfy that itch to do business, but I've done it within the dental industry, which has turned out quite well. So I'm blessed and I'm happy that I did it. Even though I was kicking and screaming through the process.
So you must be quite able though to have got into dentistry when your heart and passion at the beginning wasn't fully into it, and still to get through dental school, which is quite a big challenge in itself. What would you say to somebody who's in dental school and didn't really want to do dentistry as a career? What advice would you be given?
That's a tough one, man, because I'm in a situation where it's worked out, but I can't say for everyone it would. Like my wife's a dentist, and that was a big part of it working out, is because she was really passionate about it and really enjoyed it and was a natural at it. And she got an honors and she won the BDA award for the best performance in finals across the whole country. So if there could be two sides of a coin, complete opposites, it'd be that situation. So I think what I would say is, and I say this to my wife sometimes, I'm like, I'd probably be like a billionaire by now if I wasn't stuck in dentistry. I'm kind of joking there with a hint of seriousness, which is what I do. But for people out there, if you've got a passion, and let's say it is creating businesses or doing something outside of dentistry, I think we're in a time period now when you should really just go and follow your passion, and don't take yes from other people as an answer. You really have to follow your own heart. So if your heart isn't in it, yep, there's a degree to which you can stick with it and follow the path I did and find your route, but that's quite an inefficient path because you're taking on student debt, which is more significant now than it was when I qualified. And what's the point if you're not going to go and really put your heart and soul into a career? So I would say to people, there's a lot of opportunities out there right now. And a great story I heard was from Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you've heard of Alex Hormozy.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his dad literally just wanted him to do the degree pathway and all this other stuff, which he did for a while. And then he realized I'm miserable with this. And he said his dad's an immigrant, like from a different country. And his dad didn't understand it. And they just didn't talk for ages because he left. And he's like, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do it. You know, he had the office in the marketing firm. He was going to go back and complete his master's. And he's like, forget this. I'm not doing it anymore. And his passion was fitness. So he started fitness businesses and look where he is now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. There's one question I've been asking a lot of dentists. In dentistry, you can wear a lot of hats. But if you were to prioritize number 1, 2, and 3, and I think from what you've said so far, I can see what your numbering is going to be. Would you say you're more of a pure-blooded clinician who just doing the clinical dentistry, that is the end all, you know, the one thing you just want to do for the rest of your life? Would you say you're an educator? That the one thing you really want to end your career being known for is that, you know, you're a dental educator? Or would you say it's the business side of dentistry? And if to prioritize that 1, 2, and 3, how would you do that?
I mean, it's a bit odd because I'm teaching a course on opening a squat practice, but number 1 would definitely be business. It's just because I find it interesting. It's not like, I think people hear business and they think I'm money orientated, but the reality is it's never been about money for me because my upbringing was quite fortunate. My dad, we lived above a fish and chip shop until I was about 12. And I saw the come up. I saw my dad grinding with my mum, like in these shops, building something to the point where he bought like a massive house when we were about 12. And I saw, like, we used to live in a terrible area. Like you'd go to the park and there'd be needles like literally on the floor, like leaves, you know. It was like proper. And we would see, because he was determined to send us to private school, we would see this opulence and richness that we just weren't familiar with, because we were just like, we're living in Chav City over here in I can't even go outside without getting chased and getting racial abuse and all this other stuff. Yeah. And then we saw this whole different world of the private school. So me and my brother, we got a very fortunate upbringing in that we got to see both sides of the coin. And what I learned is when my dad got it, like he got the big house, he got the nice cars and all of that stuff, I saw that it doesn't really give you the fulfillment that you think it does, you know. So when you've seen it and you've been in the nonsense place and the living above a fish and chip shop, and you go to the point where you're living in a massive house, you start to see that money ain't it. It's about fulfillment. It's about what you enjoy doing. And if you earn money as a side effect, great, you know, and you probably will if you're good at something. So number 1 is a clear business thing. And specifically creating businesses. I love creation of things. So creation is definitely my thing, as opposed to, I enjoy operating businesses, but creating is number 1. Number 2 would probably be, I actually do enjoy clinical dentistry. I really do enjoy implants. It's something that you enjoy what you're good at. I don't know what happened first, whether I got good at it quickly or whether I was just natural at it, but I don't know what happened. I was decent at it from the start, and it just helped me build this kind of confidence. And I love doing those big smile transformations you can get with implant dentistry, full arch and stuff like that. It's great. And then third, even like I said, it's weird because I'm running a course, is probably the educator thing. I'm kind of doing the educator thing just to save people hassle, really. And it's more of a bloody community service project than actually something that I think I'm going to do long term. I don't think it's going to be something I'm going to do for that long, to be honest. It'll probably be a year or two and then I'll be out.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, when people think of dentists, they probably might think of white coat, old guy, really scary. They might not picture someone like you who's getting involved with podcasts and doing some education and business. So do you think that's a generational thing where things are switching in terms of the dental professionals that are coming through? Why do you think the makeup of dentists is becoming different, or is it not different? It's just there's more opportunities for us to express ourselves.
Oh, that's interesting, because it's hard to say whether someone with the white coat would be comfortable doing what even you're doing as well with the YouTube channel and everything else that you're doing, and being comfortable on video and stuff. I think, to be honest, I do think there's a bit of a generational thing. It's that we're living in a different time now where we've got access to these things like YouTube. You turn a camera on, bang, you can put yourself out there, and Instagram and all these other things. So I think that it's just because we've got the opportunity, and we must be all creative, because dentistry is really quite an artistic career pathway. I mean, people might not know that if they're not in the career, but I see it like that. If you see some work, you're like, well, that's art, man. Like, it really is. So we've all got a creative side in us. I guess we're just pursuing different avenues that allow us to push that creativity and test that creativity muscle in our brain. And I enjoy doing it, and I'm sure you do as well, mate.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the opportunities that dentistry can afford us to pursue. And it's not just the traditional, you become a specialist or general dentistry is all you do. So many other things you can be doing. One thing you said was your wife's a dentist.
Yes.
And one of the things people think about when they're starting out as dentists or in the dental careers, where am I going to meet my partner? How's it all going to happen? Did you meet at dental school, or how did that all happen?
Yeah, so we met at dental school. She was in the original year that I failed, but we got on really well, and that was the way it started. It was just friends. It wasn't really exploring anything, and then it just organically turned into something, So we actually got married during university, because I don't mess about. So that's probably a character trait, actually.
Yeah, so I actually got married in my so just before I started final year. I
Did you? We must be an exclusive club, mate.
But I wasn't as brave as you. I waited until, so my wife's a medic. I waited until she finished her finals, and then that's when I set up for the wedding. But it looks like you just decided to get married, while she was still.
Yeah. Just went for it, mate.
How did you convince her parents?
We don't want to go into that one. How did I convince my parents on my days? Yeah, we did basically eloped effectively, but we didn't get permission, thankfully, from her dad, obviously, because you need to, but begrudgingly, very begrudgingly, let's put it that way. Yeah. So look, I mean, my perspective is I, to be honest with you, I probably wanted, my heart was probably set on, and this might sound really left field, probably set on being like almost a monk. I was heavily into meditation. I did meditation retreats 15, 16 years old. So my head was not at all in finding a person, relationships, none of that. And I actually think there's a useful lesson there, is that it's almost when you're not looking for the thing, it presents itself. Rather, and it was more of a surprise. I was like, oh, where's this come from? Whereas when you come out and you're almost seeking it in a almost desperate way, and you've got this real clutching mentality that you really, I need to do this, I need to find this, I need to do that. I often find that when you're like that in any scope of your life, it's not going to turn out the way you want.
Yeah. And that's some good advice, because especially in dentistry, people want to have their whole life mapped out. I'm going to be married by this age. I'm going to be doing this specialism by this age. I'm going to have this many kids, the house, whatever lifestyle by this age. So it's really interesting what you've said there. It's sometimes when you're not, desperately looking for something, it'll present itself in the right timing. That's really good. The implant pathway. One of the things that I hear is that a lot of people that go on courses and start to learn new skills like implants don't actually implement the skill and never really take off. And that can be applied to anything. I'm into aligners, and it's the same. A lot of people train to become providers, but never really progress to do many cases at all. So what was it about you that managed to push through that initial barrier of not taking on cases soon after learning the skill?
I think it's a mindset thing. I really do. I think it's about confidence and mindset. I think if you've got a self-talk or a narrative within your own mind that you've maybe been projected onto you by parents or figures of authority from a young age, and you've allowed that to propagate in your mind, and you've allowed that to take a seat in your mind, and you start to believe that I'm not this, I'm not that, I can't do this, I can't do that. That kind of narrative, you will find it much more difficult. And the type of people who are more courageous are generally the people who don't allow narratives like that to exist. They're almost like, no, I recognize that narrative's there. I recognize that someone didn't believe in me, but I don't believe it, and then I think that's the biggest difference. And I don't know about you, because you'll probably be able to answer that question yourself, Arnold, is whether you agree with me or not. But I really do feel it comes down to strength of mindset and confidence in yourself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think what I found is the climate that we get trained to become dentists almost puts a fear in us not to do the things we've been trained to do. And I think that fear stops us from becoming, the clinicians that we can become, because we're scared to make a mistake. And in anything clinical, there's going to be some mistakes that get made along the way. It's just the nature of working with human beings. We're not perfect. But I think people are now so scared that they can't put in the reps doing certain skills, and they never get to really progress and become confident. But once you've
think a good way of doing that, and that's a great point, I talk about reps a lot as well. A great way of doing that is to actually push yourself from a very early stage. So we all get discomfort. And one of those things that you might be uncomfortable about when you're coming out of university, for example, is, let's say, a surgical extraction. Put yourself consciously in those waters where you have to do it, where you in a safe way, make sure you've got someone who can assist or mentor or someone nearby, but put yourself in an environment that allows you to be pushed from an early stage after you qualify. I think that there should be a mix. Like, you don't want to be in a full NHS practice for too long. You could build your skills, your hand motor skills and all of that stuff there. But the type of dentistry that you might want to do is very different to the NHS way, with regards to how you talk to patients, with regards to how much time you have. All of these are the factors. I think staying in the NHS for 2 or 3 years is a good idea to build your soft skills, wet skills with your hands, and then start to transition and say, right, I'm going to start challenging myself. I want to get a job with someone who can mentor me in these things that I'm not comfortable doing. And just keep putting yourself in uncomfortable situations in a safe way. Because obviously the patients come first. You want to make sure that you're ethical. Keep putting yourself in those uncomfortable waters. And if you keep doing that from a young age, what you'll do is you'll build your confidence, because you'll say in your mind, even if you've got a negative narrative, you'll be saying, well, I've done that. I put myself in that uncomfortable situation. I worked there. I proved myself there. Yeah, the job didn't go well. I left after 6 months. But I tell you what, I learned a lot in that 6 months that other people won't have. And there's this steady build that you do of yourself as well that goes underrated. You really do have to build your confidence. And here's where some people come a cropper now, Arnold, is they go too fast. They'll put themselves in a situation where they see work on Instagram and they're like, right, I want to do that. Yes, but what you should really do is reach out to the person who's doing that work and ask them, what was your career trajectory like?
Yeah.
What did you do to get where you are now? Does anybody DM someone and ask that? It's so obvious.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, like go and ask them and say, and they'll tell you, here's what I did. Here's who I got mentored by for how many years. And this is the track that I went down. So you see me, and I've got a delegate like this who's 28, 29, doing like high-end bonding work all the time. But he went through the process and worked under Monic at one of Monic's practice for a long time. So people look at his Instagram and think, oh, this guy's good, isn't he? He's doing a lot of bonding cases. I wouldn't mind doing that. Yeah, but go and find out what he's done. Don't start doing it.
Yeah.
You want to actually follow the career path of people that you look up to, and actually go and ask them and say, what have you done to get to this level? And then they'll tell you. And it's not picked up a case on bonding straight away. I'll tell you what will happen is you'll ruin your confidence. You will destroy yourself because you will do a case and it will come back and you'll be like, this is terrible. And the patient, I didn't select my patient properly. And all these lessons I could have learned from a mentor, but it's crushed your confidence and it's left you in a hole where you're saying, right, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think this happens a lot with implant dentists is they'll do an implant surgery. It'll go awry for whatever reason. Maybe because they weren't conscientious enough to pay a mentor to be there for the first few cases where they're doing them in practice. Yeah, forget about a course. You need a mentor live with you, right? And then you're in a situation where something's gone wrong and you just get burnt. Yeah, I can't do this. This was too stressful.
Yeah, so I want to ask how you progressed in your implant training and got to the stage that you're at now and the confidence that you're at now with it, because I find that for myself, in terms of communication and confidence, getting things started, that can be really high. But then you can't just have that because, like you're saying, that can be the ruin of you. So I knew that for myself, I had to constantly be in a place where I'm going on courses, year-long courses, getting the theory and the knowledge, the grounding in ortho, as well as having a mentor who was overseeing what I was doing. Because I could have easily just, I can talk to patients, I can get this started, but I could have ruined so many smiles just by going that direction. So what was it like for you? Were you strong clinically at the beginning and had to work on the communication, or were you really strong in communication and getting case acceptance and you had to really work on the clinical skills of implant placement?
I think probably the latter. I think obviously when you pick up a new skill, it's very rare for you to pick up an instrument. It's like that thing, isn't it? I could probably play piano like that grandmaster, but I've never tried. It's unlikely that you're just going to pick something up and be Beethoven, and just do it automatically, and that kind of takes the fun out of it anyway. You want to go through a process where you're earning your stripes and you get to a point where you're actually good, right? So in terms of my career trajectory, I did the Tipton 2017 course. The reason why I don't often talk about Tipton courses is because it wasn't the course. I know it wasn't the course. I could have done any 1-year implant course. It was the approach afterwards, which you talked about. And what I did on my course, this is a first-year implant course, Introduction to Implants. There were people bringing in patients in my cohort, right? Getting full arch patients in. And I was just looking at that and I was thinking, what? Like, I didn't say it because I'm too polite, but I was like, what are you doing? Because the definition of what you're trying to do there is running before you can walk. And what did we just talk about? You get burnt.
Just explain the difference, just for people that don't know.
So full arch rehab is basically, let's say, for example, you've got an edentulous patient and you're going to probably do some bone removal, a large surgery, like where you're exposing the full, let's say, upper palate. You can see up to the zygoma nearly. When you reflect it, you can see down, fully onto the palate. It's a big site, it's a big surgery, and there's a lot of skill involved and a lot of time needed to even be brave enough to even start doing it. And what I thought was, you're wasting your time there because the clinician who's teaching us is just going to end up doing the whole case. You're not going to get any reps. And it's good for your ego because you're like, oh yeah, I've done a full arch case or I've restored a full arch case. But what else is it good for? You know what I mean? Have you actually done anything? So my approach was very much stick to the criteria, simple cases, mainly premolar cases. Wasn't keeping them aesthetic because aesthetic cases are harder. premolar cases are pretty standardized, right? So I was like, right, those are all my patients. I found 7 patients for my NHS list at the time, took them across to Manchester and did those premolar cases. Then what I did was I stuck with premolar cases for a while after I'd finished the course, still sold new cases at the practice I was working at, did the premolar stuff. And then I just started gently expanding, did a 6, did another 6, did probably another 6, and then just got more and more comfortable. And what I found was I was just patient selection. I was just staying within the lane that I was comfortable with. And once I got very comfortable there, then I was just saying, oh, let's extend it a little bit. Let's extend it a little bit. Let's extend it a little bit. And then you get to the point where you're just doing extra reading. You're going into it before you're doing an anterior case, looking at the things that can go wrong, the ways I can adapt it to do better. And these are all staged, It's like, as well through Invisalign, there'll be cases that are go cases, or there'll be cases that are really complex that you probably wouldn't touch or you'd want to get done by an orthodontist, But it's like, there's some people out there doing pretty mad stuff with Invisalign because they've just steadily built their confidence up over time. And that's what I'm talking about. And then when I went into the full arch arena, I got mentored, so I got mentors to come out and teach me. And I'd done way over 150 implants at that point. So I just built my proficiency slowly over time. I was just, hair, that tortoise and the hair thing.
Yeah. So I think some people listening to this will think it's quite straightforward, but I'm interested in knowing, how did you incorporate it into the practice that you're working at? Because unless there's somebody else doing implants, was there even the equipment to be doing the implant work? Did your principal purchase the equipment? So all of these things that sometimes aren't really obvious to the person thinking about doing it. What did you have to change, and what did you have to accommodate for to actually be able to enhance your skill?
So I was working at my dentist clinic at the time, and the funny story about my implant course is the practice manager actually came to me in late 2016, and she said, because she's trying to increase her private side of that practice, and she said to me, would you be interested in an implant course? And that's what actually ended up in me doing an implant course, as daft as that sounds. So I kind of said to her, I said, Kaz, like, you got me to do the course, mate. You're gonna have to get me the stuff now. But here's one thing, right? Here's one thing that people don't realize is they're people at the end of the day, right? So a practice manager, you might see them working at a corporate in a position of authority. But here's something here's a little hack I can give to all your listeners or anyone watching this is build personal relationships so people actually like you. And what you'll find is people want to do things for you to help you out if they like you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big one, but it's so obvious, isn't it?
I had the same thing. My practice manager, Lorraine, she was instrumental in getting me the equipment. I started doing fixed ortho. You have to get all the equipment for that.
Yeah.
Getting a scanner, so I totally agree. You have to have a great relationship, practice manager and the principal, to get things
if
going.
They fight your corner, mate, if you can get them to a point where they're fighting your corner, they believe in you and what you're doing, and you're confident enough to say, look, I am going to do this. I'm selling cases. And the way I did it, Arnold, for real, was I started selling cases straight away. I wasn't waiting for the equipment. And what I realized was then I can go to them and say, look, I've got 10 grand's worth of treatment plans here, sat. Get me the stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're in a situation where the guy's already selling the work, right? He's already sold it. It's done. It's there. The treatment plans are signed. The money's been taken, and you've not got the kit. I'm kind of strong arming you into doing it. Like, what are we gonna do? Give these patients refunds because you can't buy the kit? I said the practice is gonna look pretty stupid if that's the case. I'm gonna have to say to them, oh, they couldn't afford the kit.
Here's another question: How did you create the space in your diary to take on more private work?
Right. So this is something I said to a nurse early doors, and she found it hilarious, right? And it's one of my jokes with a hint of seriousness, right? But there was something I realized when I shadowed a couple of implant dentists before I went and did implant dentistry. It was, and again, this is so obvious. It was right. My history. I'm not that keen on dentistry, right? So I've made that clear beforehand. So I was in a situation where I'm saying, right, I was working 6 days a week, and I'm like, these mugs here. I'm a mug because these guys are working 3 days a week. right? And why are they able to work 3 days a week? Oh, it's because they're doing implant dentistry. Okay. So what is it about implant dentistry that allows them to work 3 days a week? Oh, it's because the hourly rate is higher, right? Because they're more specialized skills, so the hourly rate can be higher.
Yeah.
So the way I looked at it was, I need to make that investment in taking that little pay cut initially, in terms of forcibly saying, I'm not going to see patients beyond this. I'm going to keep this afternoon free to do implant consultations, because I had a vision of knowing that if I get my reps up, I can get my hourly rate higher and then be in a situation where I can actually work less. So it becomes a no-brainer at that point. When it's just logical thought process, isn't it? It's just do it. It's pretty obvious.
And the nurse that you had, how did you take her along, or him along with you on providing implants? Were
Yeah,
they
so
already trained in
she
that?
came with me on one of the course days to get some training, but it was really like the blind leading the blind. Like when we were setting up that first case, Jesus, I think they got us someone nursing somewhere who had a little bit of experience, but even then, like it'd been a while since she'd done an implant case, so
Yeah.
it was a bit, was it completely sterile by the book? Who knows? But the main thing is that you believe in them, and they were pushing it, and they did help me get the first probably like 10, 15 cases in surgery, and then you become to a position where you can't really be reliant on anyone else, because they're gonna go off and do their own thing. And she actually went and did hygiene therapy, and I think she's just qualified as a hygiene therapist, so
Yeah.
she wasn't the type of person to hang around. She actually quite enjoyed that I was pushing it and trying something new. But it is important to have a nurse who's on side. But again, if they like you and if you get on, you're in a position where, like I said, people will do things for you because they've got a good relationship with you, and you do the same for them. You would, because if you like them, you're like, oh yeah, I'll help them out because they're nice people, they're good to me, and we get on. So those
Yeah.
kind of mutual relationships are so important to build in the career.
Yeah. There's a trend I'm noticing with you in that you're willing to find a way. So it could be easy to say, no, I'm not really interested in implants. I don't want to do that, and pass up that opportunity from your practice manager. It could have been easy to say, no, I haven't got the space in my diary. I'm completely packed out. I've got UDAs to meet, so I can't do it. You could have said, no, I don't have the correctly trained nurse to be able to do this, or, I haven't been doing dentistry for long enough to get into this. But it seems that you find a way to progress
Yeah.
and make things work.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think it's probably what we were talking about before about mindset, and it's just nobody's going to give you anything, right? You're not living in a fairy tale where our version of Prince Charming is going to come along and give us everything we want. Look, wake up, mate. You're in the real world, right? If you want things to happen, you have to make them happen. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So you can't be sitting there passive. And look, and this is something that a lot of young dentists need to realize is be willing to take a pay cut. Take a pay cut. Like they'll spend 10 grand on a course. And I'm like, okay, you're spending 10 grand on a course, but you don't realize that if you went and got mentored by someone, like later in my implant career, I took 50 quid an hour to work for somebody. Look, I was placing a lot of implants. I could have been earning probably close to 200K at that point. But it's like, yeah, I'll take a pay cut because I'm getting to do reps. I'm getting to do work. Like, see it as the ultimate investment in yourself. That's what it is. Like, how much money do you need? Like, if you're hitting your base income and you don't have to live the baller lifestyle, if you can have a decent house and be living decent here, go and take that time early doors to go and get mentored and take pay cuts.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's just really good there. I want to move on to your journey now into practice ownership. So what made you feel like, right, this was the time to do it? And what did you do in terms of preparation for then taking that step into practice ownership?
So the first thing that we did before lockdowns, etc., was the year preceding that we were actively looking for existing practices to buy. So going viewing practices. We wanted to be private practices because we just want to do private dentistry. So it seemed logical at the time. Had an offer in for a place in Harrogate. The guy didn't end up selling actually, because I think he just got cold feet about selling it. But then you're learning about the accountancy process, you're learning about the looking at the books, you're learning about analyzing the accounts a bit and getting a feel for like how does the practice work, where could we optimize things, how much value could we add. So you're starting to build those kind of mental capacity about business when you're seriously looking down these avenues. Then we had one where we had a deposit down for a practice in Leeds, just when COVID hit and everything shut down. We managed to get our deposit back, but that would have been a big purchase and I think a big mistake on reflection. So I'm glad that happened. And then my wife and I were sat there. We all had plenty of time over lockdown. We started creating an app, but that's a whole different avenue. When we simultaneously were building a business plan up for squat practice, because we're like, why are we paying nearly £1 million, most of it bank debt, bank loans, for an existing business? We trust ourselves to set it up ourselves and just go from scratch and build an asset that's we could probably set up for like 350, so why not do that? So we started building a business plan, having ideas of the type of work we wanted to do, having a very clear niche of the type of work we want to do, and how we're different in our area. And then you just have that business plan ready. You adapt it a little bit, you change it, you tweak it. But when the opportunities present themselves, then you're able to quickly move and actually take advantage of those and talk from an informed perspective because you've already done the work on the business plan, etc. So when the opportunities presented themselves to us, we were able to capitalize on those. And yeah, I hope that answered the question a bit.
How did you approach them? So let's say you threw out the number of 350,000 there. How much of that would you say you were thinking would be a loan, or did you even think about a loan from the bank at all? And how much would be your own personal capital that you would raise and save to then start up the practice?
Well, to be honest, at the time, Arnold, it was a tough one because I was working at a fully private practice, and as soon as March 22nd hit, we all got let go. All of the clinicians at the private practice got let go. So you're not in a position where you're thinking, I've got money in the bank account to spend on something. You're thinking, I've got money in the bank account as a reserve to cover off my mortgage. And nobody knew how long this thing was going to last, right? So everyone was like, some people were saying it's the end of dentistry. Aerosol generating procedures are gone. Seriously, people were saying it though, Arnold, remember? So we were in a situation where you're not going to be looking at spending any money. You're thinking about, I'm keeping it, all right, or whatever I've got. The other side of it is banks don't really like squat practices. You can find some lenders that will give you finance, but you do probably have to put up about a third. And you really do. It really depends on the environment. Right now, it's probably only one or two main lenders that are gonna finance it. There are some sub lenders that can help you, but I never really liked the idea of bank loans. So if I could do it, there was always in the back of my mind that if I could do it with private investors, it was in the back of my mind I'd want to do it with private investors. And actually, the way we set up, I'll just go into it in a little bit more detail, was the app that we were developing. We went through several different funding rounds for this app, which was going to be like a dental booking app. So I had late round pitches to venture capitalists. We got to the last round on this like Dragon's Den type situations and several different venture caps. And then we ended up securing funding from an angel group of investors for £225,000 to help us launch the app as a first round of funding. The only problem is when we went to legal, it was basically that I wouldn't be able to work as a dentist. They wanted me to be full-time working on the app. And obviously, as a household, that wouldn't make any sense because we need me to be working and generating income so that we can survive as a family. So the whole process broke down at that point. But one of the investors was local to us from the Angel Group. And we had a meeting with him and he was like, I'm thinking of setting up a squat practice. I've got a potential site ready and all this other stuff. And then he was going to just put his name down on the bank loan. So we secured the bank loans, all of that stuff. And then long story short, I didn't really like his ethos. So his vision and values, as soon as I started to get to know him a bit better and get in a bit more detail. So I said, you know what, it's not going to work between us. And he was a bit older, so it was really going to be me and my wife running the place anyway. So then we had a bit of a back and forth, had to unwind all of the loans, all of the lease agreements, everything, and then I had about 3 weeks to find investors. Otherwise, I probably would have faced losing my house potentially and all sorts. So talk about putting myself in uncomfortable situations. That was that was
At this stage,
incredible.
did you have children?
Oh yeah. 2. Yeah. So it's fun.
Yeah. So it looks like you do have your challenges, and
Oh,
again,
100%.
at any point, it could be enough for someone to say, "Okay, I'm tapping out. It's not meant to be."
Yeah. What I'll say to people is this, right? Squat practice ownership is not for everyone.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm teaching a course, but the main reason I teach it, and I have phone calls all the time with clinicians, and we'll talk about whether it's the right fit for them. And I've had conversations recently with guys who are high-powered associates. They're earning really good gross revenue. That they're happy with the net they're taking home. They've got a bit of a work-life balance. They're able to start teaching courses. They've been invited to start teaching bits and bobs. They want to do a bit of that. And then I'm like, well, where does squat practice really fit into this? Because it's going to dominate your whole life. It's not like something you can dip in and out of. Like it's going to take over everything. So and then we just get to the conclusion that it's probably not the right fit for you, mate. Move on to something else. And then I'll get other clinicians that'll be like, right, I feel ready, I want to do it, and this is why I want to do it, and they're very clear on it. And then I'm there to help navigate their path to get them to the point where they're opening. And several of my delegates now are people who are pretty high performing, high powered clinicians that don't really need to work for someone else. And the main thing that I talk about this, I've got a free webinar coming out about whether you should open a squat practice. And then one thing I talk about in there is leverage, understanding leverage in business. So here's an example. We've just talked about it. Instead of me going to the practice manager, to fund the implant work and saying, right, here's what I want to do, and here's what I'm going to possibly generate, and here's what I need, and what's the outlay is going to be for the practice. Instead of doing that, I created a situation where I had leverage because I had treatment plans already signed up and paid to the practice, right? So there you've got leverage, and you can assert your leverage on a situation. So a lot of associates don't understand that. If your practice that you're working at now is generating all your patients, how do you think a squat practice will work? Because you've not actually proven that you can generate patients. And what's the main way you generate revenue? Patient generation. Yeah. So if you've not sorted that out and you haven't got that funnel ready and understand how to get patients through the door, you're really asking a lot of yourself when you go and open a squat practice. Now, inside track, I didn't have it figured out. But I want to save people the hassle of trying to navigate too many things, because it wasn't just me. I had my wife with me as well, who's also super intelligent and a high performing clinician. Yeah. So that means our bandwidth collectively is wider than probably most people who are individuals looking to do it. So the way I teach the course is in a way which is a bit more reproducibly successful than the way that we did it, really.
Yeah, you'll have to send me a link for the webinar.
I will,
and I'll check it out as well. So, okay, I actually want to get a bit more into what you're doing there with other clinicians and helping them start squat practices. So, what would you say clinicians are benefiting from when they're coming to you and thinking about starting a squat practice?
You know what? The way I can answer that is with the philosophy behind the business that I'm doing with it. And
just the name as well of the business.
Yeah, it's a squat practice blueprint. So that's the name of it. And the philosophy behind what I'm doing is pretty much, and it sounds a bit weird, right? We've got in a situation where the private equity and stuff has really inflated prices for dentists who are looking to buy existing practices, and really made the barrier much higher, and made it in a situation where you have to take on so much more debt to get to that situation. So what I'm trying to do is level the playing field a little bit, is give associates the tools to actually go and do it reproducibly, successfully themselves. And what I basically teach is every single system effectively that we use. And I shouldn't be doing it. It's actually a bit stupid from a business perspective. But there is a mission behind it, which is really to help dentists. And it sounds kind of soapboxy, like I'm on a soapbox, but like I don't really want to work with people that I don't like. So I have to like you for you to get the one-to-one mentorship. Like, it's just not going to happen if I don't like you, because I'm not after the. I don't really need them. I'm not in a position where I need loads of cash. It's not my fault. Not my thing.
Yeah.
So my thing is, I want to genuinely help people. I want to break that cycle of working for a corporate, working for a big entity. You're the lackey who's doing all the work. You're helping them build value in their business. What do you
Yeah.
see out of that at the end when they exit? Not. You're not going to see anything. You're just going to have another boss. Why be in that position potentially when you can build an asset yourself based off your work? The gross that you're generating directly relates to an increase in your gross, would directly relate to an increase in the value of the practice that you're building. And you're not building it for someone else or something else. In the case of a corporate, you're building it for you and your family. And I think that that's a massive thing. And to be honest with you, Arnold, I think people take it for granted that opportunity is going to be available for a very long time. That's not the way I see the world going. I was talking to Kunal about this briefly on the podcast. Is private equity groups could tomorrow say, you know what? So there's a big merger happening that not many people know about in the dental space right now. But let's say when that happens, there's going to be a situation where they could just say, you know what? We've got all this cash. Let's just flood the market, right? Free checkups in all of our practices across the country. Just blow them out of the water. Let's just put them all out of business.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the point that people are taking for granted, is the world is becoming more and more monopolized across every industry. And it's because the people with the access to the capital are the people, the private equity groups. They've got an unfair market advantage in every single market. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help the little guy or the little girl or the little person get to a point where they can have their own asset that they can potentially sell on to private equity whilst they have an appetite to buy existing businesses, because that appetite's not going to last forever. And we need to be able to capitalize on that now, or in the next 3 to 5 years, because the world's changing very fast. And people are really taking for granted that the opportunities that we have right now are going to be available to us later. And I don't think they are. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that you bring that up there. I want to just ask you some practical things that people can start to really consider and think about implementing on their journey to starting a practice. So the first thing is for the associate who's thinking, do I have enough money? Do I have enough experience? And do I gross enough to be able to stand on my own 2 feet with the squat practice? So let's just start there.
First off, they're very good questions, by the way, Arnold. Very good questions. So the first part of it was it, do I have the money to start up?
Yes.
My philosophy, and it's also something I teach, is I didn't put any capital in for mine. And that's because I took advantage of a private investor model, and I teach people how to pitch. Like, obviously, I've developed an app, pitched that to VCs, got successful funding from angel groups. I understand that side of things way better than anyone else in our industry, right? So you don't need money to do it. That's a fallacy. Okay, so you don't need your own money, and I actually don't want you using your own money ideally, even if you have got it saved, because capital is so hard to generate. Why waste it all in a business?
Ownership wise, do you still have a big chunk of ownership?
Yeah, you can do it in different ways. Legal things like ratchets down and all this other stuff. Like, if anyone's watched Dragon's Den or anything, they know that there's ways of doing it where you can do it. And the way I always say like this is, if you are doing a business responsibly in a lean startup kind of way, which is a very tech centric way of doing it, they never use their own money and their own capital. They always use somebody else's. And their philosophy is, I'd rather have a percentage of something that is worth, let's say, millions, than a bigger percentage of something that's worth less. Because at the end of the day, all I care about is how much I'm going to get on the exit. So this is a business philosophy that a lot of people are slow on the uptake on, but you don't need to be too bothered about having massive percentages of businesses, because you get support from entrepreneurs who understand business, and those things, that support is actually really important, and it does help you develop. So that's the first one. Money, I don't think you need any. Really, it'd be good to have some reserves just in case, but realistically, unless you want a bank loan, Even then, if let's say you need 30%, like you could probably start a squat if you were being really lean for around 200K, 250K. So a third of that, would be something where I'd say if you wanted to go down a bank loan, you probably need a third. Okay. So that's one thing there. What was the next thing you mentioned? Was it
So
experience?
experience. Yeah. Do I know enough clinically to even now get into practice ownership or building a squat?
That depends on your business model. So if your business model is to do high-end work, if you've not got the repetitions, you've not got the volume of cases to support that, then you're being daft with your business model. Your business model then needs to be work that you're familiar with at the beginning, and then you can add in those things later. So let's say, for example, you've been doing fillings, crowns, normal restorative general dentistry, and you're good at that, you've got proficient at that, do that. And then build your practice up, and then add the highfalutin stuff in later and build your reps up that way. But that's all a business model issue, not really I'm not really age limited. It's more realistic. Like, you've got to be realistic about what you're doing. If the dentistry you're doing is too stressful and it's not an easy standard, for example, put it to me, like I can do a single implant in under 10 minutes now. Right. I could do it half asleep, mate. It's not something that I'm going to stress about. So if you're in a situation where you've got something that is easy to you to do, that's the best thing to be doing your squat practice or basing your squat practice on, in my opinion. And then what was the last one? Was it there was three: money, experience.
The experience, the money, and I guess knowing when that right timing is to then take that step.
Yeah, I mean that's a very individual one. The problem, and this is what I like to do and inform people, is when we're doing a consent process with a patient, it's very important for them to understand what they're actually getting themselves into, right? Especially if I'm doing a full arch rehab, which I discussed before, or it's massive surgery, mate. You're going to get swelling. You're going to get pain for a week. It's going to be rough, right?
Yeah.
These are the types of words I use with patients. I want them to know what they're getting themselves into. If you're not nervous on the morning that you're coming, if the patient's not nervous, I'm thinking I haven't done my bloody informed consent correctly yet, right? They should be. Right? I want them to be, right? Because then that means that like they know properly what they're getting themselves in for. So that's the first point. You need to understand that it's not all fairies and unicorns. It is a melting pot of stress potentially. And what I say to people is it has the capacity, more than anything else that you do clinically, to destroy your mental health.
Okay.
Because when you get financial pressure to the degree where not just the financial pressure, you're paying staff, you're providing a livelihood for people, you're servicing patients. If your business goes under, those patients lose their money, your staff lose their jobs. That is a completely different level of pressure than just being an associate dentist and dealing with the dentistry side of things. You're piling it on yourself, and you have to be built for that. And you only really know if you're built for it when you go and do it, to be fair. But some people might surprise themselves and find that, I'm navigated that really tough situation really well. But my key point, and there's a point that was been a clear running line through this conversation, is get mentored. Take advantage of someone like me, because I ain't going to be doing this for long because it takes too much of my time. So take advantage of the opportunities that are out there with mentors and things to help you on your way. Because if you don't, would you start doing implant dentistry without going on a course? So why are you going to start trying to open a business? Do you know anything about business? Most dentists, do you understand how to do any of this? No.
Good point. Very good point.
I had to learn it the hard way, Arnold, man. I'm being serious. Trust me, mate.
You just reminded me, actually. Okay, so I'm what do I need to be grossing to then be able to transition and say, I can hold my own, I can pay staff, I can pay the bills that need to go out. What do I need to be grossing?
So this again comes back to your business model. So what you find is, right, the lean startup, I explain this very, very thoroughly in the course, but the lean startup is you are not starting up with a big 3, 4, 5 surgery practice. You're starting up with 1 or 2 surgeries max, right? And what you're doing is you're keeping everything lean, keeping your staff low because you want to keep your costs and your overheads as low as possible. That decreases the pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
Then the business model comes in. If you're doing dentistry that's highfalutin, you know and I know that your costs go up. Your Invisalign bill will go up, or if you're doing a big restorative case, your lab bill will go up, or if I'm doing a big implant case, I have to pay for the implants, I have to pay for my components, I have to pay the lab as well. All of these things go up. How much does a composite filling cost you?
As a patient or as
a dentist, as a business, what you have to pay for the capsule of the composite, the etch, the bond, but in real terms, it doesn't really cost that much, right? So the reality is that if you're operating a business model where you're doing general dentistry, you don't have to be grossing as much as you think for it to work. Because let's say if you're doing a private emergency extraction, let's say you charge £50 just for the patient to secure an emergency appointment, and then you charge £150 to take the tooth out. Or if it's a really difficult surgical extraction, you're charging maybe £250 or 300 quid or whatever. Let's say that from a gross perspective, you just took in about 300 quid for one patient. Can you see how, if your overheads are low, that's one patient I'm talking about? Like, if your overheads are low, you're gonna be able to do well without grossing ridiculous amounts of money. Where people get themselves in hot water, Arnold, is when they try to build themselves too quick and they look at these big practices like, I want to build that. I say, take the ego completely out of it. I ain't interested in any of that. I'm interested in you not calling me saying you can't sleep, right? Or I'm interested in you calling me and saying, look, Harry, like, I'm so glad that you told me to do it this way, because I've seen people, look, mate, there's 2 practices I know of near me. The set up of squat practices with 3 surgeries. They both closed their doors. They both went out of business within 6 months.
Gosh.
So it's not like, this ain't a thing where you open your doors and patients just magically appear into your diaries. You could say, I've got great footfall. Footfall doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, mate. It's all about the digital world now, and you're at a digital disadvantage because every other website that's out there in your area has been around longer than yours. And they've got more credibility. It doesn't matter how much you pay for SEO. You're still not going to be as up there as Google's going to allow their website to be, because they've got a track record. They've been there for 10 years, right? And even the reviews, you have to build everything up from scratch. And there's this degree of thing that there's such an arrogance involved with some people in dentistry where they really don't comprehend how much goes in to making a successful business. But I also marry that with, if you do the simple things correctly and you keep your ego out of it, you can easily be a profitable business. There's no reason why you shouldn't be, but you just need to do it in the correct way.
Is this a truth or a myth, the fact that you don't earn in your first year?
We did. The business, on an accountancy perspective, I think made a slight loss. But that was actually because of the startup fees are included in that. So, like the startup costs of the business, that's included. But we actually, in real terms, made a profit. But you have to have all of your ducks in a row and understand patient generation is something you've definitely got to get your head around. And you've also got to have very, very clear identity, very clear business model, a very clear business plan, understand what you're doing, what you're offering, what niche you're operating in, and why you're different to other people in the area, and how you can optimize so that you actually get patients through the door, because you're very, very specific about what you do. An example of that, Arnold, would be, just to add some color to that, it'd be, for example, an emergency dental clinic. So there's one that I include on my course because I think the branding's amazing. But they basically just say, right, we're an emergency dental clinic. I think they're in Manchester. And the branding's a bit cartoonish, but it's just emergency dentistry, 24 hours right on it, right? And basically what they do is probably principals in there, they get locums on a day rate to cover the night shifts. And then, you just have a business model where that's what you're known for. Emergencies. So if someone wants an emergency, they look on Google, that's the tag, but that's what they're also known for. And the word of mouth spreads because they're like, yep, they're the emergency dentist. If you're in toothache pain at 9, 10 o'clock at night, they're who you're in. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and that business model is fantastic. It's not egotistical. You're not doing highfalutin dentistry. You're just getting people out of pain, but you're servicing what the market wants, not what you want, right? You're servicing what the market wants and needs, and your patient base is much bigger. Your volume of patients that you've got access to is bigger in a market like that. Because how many people get pain?
Yeah, well, a lot. You're taking us away from the romantic scenes we have in our mind about practice ownership, and you're bringing us to a reality of business. If you could tell us some of the things that went well when you were starting your squat practice, and maybe some of the things you think you could have done better, when you might do this again, what would you change going forward? So yeah, just some learnings from your experience.
So one of the things that went really well, in my opinion, is
all right. So if you've missed the webinar by the time you've watched this, I will be putting Dr. Harry's details in the description. So make sure to check that out and give him a message. But no, thank you, Dr. Harry, for coming on today. And hopefully this is the start of many conversations that we do have going forward.
Yeah, mate. And thank you for your time. And I must say, as you know, because I host the podcast, I have to say some of your questions were excellent, mate. So well done. And I can see that, you know, you're good at what you do, you know. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate being on your channel. So next time you see me, the studio will be upgraded. I'm quite excited about this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah, and maybe even I might be able to pay you and your wife a visit just to see what the practice is like.
Absolutely, mate. You're completely, totally welcome. We've got a very open door policy to associates, and you're not that far away, mate. So yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. Well, guys, I will catch you at the next video. Have a good day. See you. Bye.